When you're an entrepreneur with a great idea, it can be daunting to find funding. Startup Raven takes the process out of your hands by helping entrepreneurs connect and learn about potential investors all in one place, without any long-filled forms or 1,000 questions. Sign up for early access at Startupraven.com.
Welcome to Startuprad.io, your podcast and YouTube blog covering the German startup scene with news, interviews, and live events.
Hello and welcome everybody. This is Joe from Startuprad.io, your startup podcast and YouTube blog from Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. Today I have another entrepreneur here in my interview. Hi Lucas, how you doing?
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm doing fine.
Totally my pleasure. We will soon talk about two things, meaning you and your startup as one piece. It's called QuantIP. And as you can already deduce from the name, it's about intellectual property, especially patents. And you brought us some exclusive data here that we're going to be going through in the second part of the interview. We'll make some neat graphics out of that. Plus, you'll be returning with an update on this data towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
And what I found most interesting is the tables have been a little bit turned. I looked into your CV. As always, down here in the show notes, there is a link to our Medium blog, and there will be a link to your LinkedIn profile for everybody who would like to reach out to you. And I've seen you always jump between business and journalism, and you actually held a few journalistic editor positions. The last one I could find is with Finanzenverlag Editor-in-Chief. Can you tell us a little bit the journey, how you jump between those two, and how is it to be editor-in-chief?
So thank you very much for having me again. I'm happy to start off with my journey. So originally I'm an economist by training, so to say. And after university, I went through a school of journalism to start my career in financial journalism, and I did that for 12 years overall. I worked within one company within several positions in different publications, but it was all about financial markets, asset management with a special focus. And I went up the ranks to become editor-in-chief of a monthly financial magazine based here in Munich called Euro, which was aimed at professional investors and sophisticated private investors. And I got the position at the age of 34, so pretty young. And I think that the journey might be explained by why I took the interest in journalism in the first place. For me, it was very much about getting to do something new in a very high frequency, and that journalism is just a fantastic field to do that. You jump into a new topic, you don't know next to nothing about it, and then you have to dig yourself into that and get a grasp of it. You hopefully meet interesting people. You learn how to distinguish people that tell you the truth and not the truth, and partly the truth. I think you learn a lot of politics in big organizations, and you learn about dynamics in markets, and you're very close to what's happening. And I think that's a very fascinating place to be in still, although journalism is a hard area to start off as a young person. But at least back then, it was a perfect environment to learn a lot at a very fast pace. And the transition then to being an entrepreneur was basically coming from the idea that I did an executive MBA program with the Stockholm School of Economics back then. And of course, you're surrounded by people that do all kinds of things. Some are entrepreneurs as well. And I thought to myself, okay, most likely I will not end up in the realm of journalism in 25 or 30 years down the road. So I want to do something new. And the next thing in terms of learning, in terms of meeting new interesting people, is probably being an entrepreneur. And I just had to wait to find the opportunity to across this a topic that has enough, that creates enough energy for me to make the jump. And I found that topic with patent information.
Mm-hmm. I would be a little bit curious how you get into patents, but first, the newspaper you talked about, Euro, I would say it's something similar to maybe Barron's in the US.
Yeah, probably yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And okay, you've been reporting on financial markets, asset management related topic, meaning I would say usually mutual funds, institutional funds, stuff like this here in Germany. Insurance asset management. We're not going to go into that. I worked there for years and we could talk about for hours, but that's not our main focus of interest here. I would be interested how you got from this into patents.
Yeah. That's like probably one of the many stories you hear about entrepreneurs. It's about meeting the right kind of person in the right kind of moment. So I went to, I think it was the Hong Kong Chamber of Commerce event. That was like remotely interesting for me. I just want to go there for the food, basically. And I happened to sit at a table with an IP lawyer who just went out from a seat at the partnership of a big firm to start his own IP analytics firm. And that lawyer basically introduced me into the opportunities that the patent databases hold. And we immediately clicked. And from then on, we just worked on weekends on the idea of QuantIP till we are ready to launch the thing.
So that could also be an interesting joke. A journalist and a lawyer get into a bar.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm interested here. What did spark your interest in those patents? What was the most fascinating information you've gotten from there that sparked your interest?
Yeah. So my interest was sparked by the fact that the things that I knew about patents, most like other people, were very superficial. So everybody has an idea what a patent is and how valuable it could be. And sometimes we read news stories about patent portfolios changing hands for billions of dollars. That, of course, makes it in the news. But other than that, it's a very closed world of IP professionals doing these kind of transactions and dealing with intellectual property on that level. So what fascinates me till today, and I'm here in the same camp with my CTO, who has a PhD in biological informatics. It's the best man-made database that ever existed, probably up till now. So what you are looking at, if you look at global patent databases, is a collection of all potentially commercial, viable technical inventions that ever came about in the last 250 years. And this is just a tremendous treasure trove of information that you can now, of course, with the technology at hand, with ML and other tools, you can digest, you can ingest in your processes, and you can make sense of it. And the high quality of the nature of the input just comes from the fact that these databases are filled by highly qualified experts in their specific fields. So we're talking about PhDs in chemical engineering in very specific parts that only monitor certain fields and are responsible for certain fields. And they only do nothing but check for new inventions coming on their desk, making sure they are classified correctly, making sure that they are there's a thorough process to investigate whether they should be granted or not. And this is to the highest quality that you can think of. And that's what we are working with as on the base level for the last 5 years.
I see. And how did you decide to make a business out of that?
Yeah, I looked at some converging trends. So I looked at asset managers and other financial institutions starting to use alternative data in their processes, be it for trying to generate alpha signals, trying to improve risk management, whatever. And I saw at the same time that there was a lack in usage, and a vast gap actually in usage of patent information, given the fact that a higher percentage every year of value creation comes from intangible assets. So if you look at balance sheet from 30, 40 years ago of the largest companies in the world, and you look at the balance sheet of the most valuable companies today, Apple and co, you see that the vast majority of value creation has moved to the side of intangible assets. And a big part of that, of course, is patents. And for me, it was kind of obvious that if more and more people would look at it that way, there was coming more demand for a better view on that, a better analytics on that part of the value creation process of companies, especially as it doesn't show up on the book value of companies using the accounting standards as we have today.
You said that is one of the pieces you can use to forecast success of a company. How strong is this link? How much do the patents, as far as you understand it right now, predict the success of a company?
Yeah. It's when you look at the timeline, of course, we're talking about patent publication, which takes place about 18 months after filing. By that time, most of the patents are not yet in production in a product, let's say. And that means we're talking about a leading indicator per se. So those products have not been, impacted yet by the patent publication you can look at. And the revenues maybe take even longer than that. And of course, we have huge differences in terms of sales cycles, pharmaceuticals versus, let's say, consumer electronics. And the shorter the sales cycle, the shorter the lead time of patent publications, the longer the sales cycle, the longer the lead time you have. So that's something very important to pull out in the first place. There are huge differences from industry to industry. And the same goes, of course, for the importance of IP for value creation. If you look at the one side, you have a biotech company, a young biotech company with zero revenues and maybe a treatment into trial 2 phase. Everything will be dependent on the quality of the IP that they've developed in the last 2, 3, 5 years. If you look at let's say, food company that has a patent for a certain process in producing, let's say, meat-like substances from peas, that is important for them, but other factors are also very important, like brand value or access to distribution networks, and so on and so on. So there's definitely a continuum of, let's say, importance for the business success, depending on the industry that you're looking at. But you need to understand that it's not only the value of the data is not only in determining success factors. That's important, very well, true. But it's also about mapping a landscape and being able to map actually those maybe food companies that are out there, because you're not only getting the information from the patent databases that a company has filed for a patent application with a certain, let's say, indicator for strength and quality of the patent that we can deliver, but also about in which areas this patent falls. So you can see and track, for example, also large companies, what are they up to? And I think one very vivid example would be car suppliers these days are under tremendous stress to do the transformation into electric vehicles and probably the future of autonomous vehicles. And of course, if you look at the web pages of those companies as of today, you would see only things that are related to that. And if you ask the CEO, they are full in transition mode. If you look at the patent portfolio, you can actually track whether this is true or not, or whether the actual innovation still takes place in the old business, and whether this transition at the core of it that needs to happen in R&D and innovation is in line with what the CEO has communicated as a strategy. And I think that's one of the many, many use cases you can do just without looking at alpha signals or anything else, just using that information to have a way clearer view of a competitive landscape.
We will soon get into that when we look a little bit on the startups in general. We just focused on GSA here. But I would be interested in what QuantIP does, meaning who are your clients? Who would it be of interest for? Plus a little bit, where are you in your startup journey? And of course, are you open to new investors?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I can start with our offering at the moment. So QuantIP offers basically three kinds of products at the moment. Number one would be data feeds that are very much tailored towards the needs of systematic and quant asset managers out there looking for investments in equities mainly. We do have a API solution for thematic search, which we probably look at the results of those in a couple of minutes, which is tailored to the needs of asset managers as well. So we have asset managers that go for themes, and as well as deal sourcing capabilities for either PE VCs or banks. We now currently help a bank with deal sourcing as well, because you can tailor the output very much to the needs of the customer. So that's a very flexible product when it comes to the output and use case. And number three, we are currently selling pre-produced, I would say, or automatically produced company research reports that are putting together everything in terms of proprietary analytics that we come up with in the last 4 years on a company level. And we are currently selling and distributing that through a couple of established platform channels and third-party research providers like Capital IQ from S&P, Refinitiv, AlphaSense. So we use the platforms there already, where currently customers already consume research on single company level. That's what we're doing right now. We came to that point to that kind of offering about 18 months ago. So the first couple of years, we were very much about building the software stack around that. And we took also 1 to 2 pivots, as many startups do. But I think from what we saw in the last 18 months, with the current offering, that's where we want to go. We saw an increase from 0 customers in that to 24 customers. We are moving from 0 revenue to most likely closing in on break even with a subscription model and very favorable MRR and retention rates within the next 6 to 12 months. So we really think it clicked now, and it's also might be interesting for other listeners here that this is a market who seems to be, it's not only us being successful here. We see a lot of interest in the market from existing IP software and data analytics providers. There's basically an oligopoly of 3 major providers globally. And one of them is very active, buying basically up IP analytics companies on a you would say monthly basis almost these days. So there's definitely something going on here.
Did they already reach out to you guys?
I don't know if I want to speak, but we speak to a lot of people. That's true, yeah.
Meaning, yes, they did. I see. Going a little bit into what you guys are actually doing. So we'll shift here a little bit between me and graphics. And for that, let me quickly activate the screen share here. Here we go. You brought us some data on patent filings, meaning this is a leading indicator because, as you said, depending on the patent, it can take a year and a half until you get it, but the filing is already official and in the databases, and that's what you're grabbing here. I've did some digging and I found a little bit over 460 different categories and more than 16,000 patents we have here in just this small sample you shared with us. What I found interesting is that there is not a big difference between Germany, Austria, and Switzerland here from the data we can see right now. I'm sure you can elaborate a little bit on what this data actually is, how far it goes back, and so on, and where it is sourced from. I found less than 100 Austrian startups, more than 220 Swiss startups, and almost 1,200 German startups. But on average, they have somewhere between 5 and 5.3 patents per company. Is that a good sign?
I mean, first of all, it's very much about how we tailor the sample that we're looking here at. So overall, we're talking about 3 to 4 million new patent applications per year globally. And of course, the vast majority of that in terms of absolute numbers is coming from large organizations with large R&D budgets, because filing for a patent just means that you have a manifestation or a data point that is pointing you towards an R&D spending that already has happened in the past. So it's already a business decision that you're looking at as well, because you went through with the money that you spend and also took the money out to file actually for a patent application for your invention. So what we put together here for this podcast is a look at the DACH region in terms of startup activity. And of course, we need to close down the universe on startups. And we did that by looking at companies that filed their first patent application in 2018 or later.
Mm-hmm.
So they're young companies. And we looked at companies with a invention portfolio. So patent and invention is slightly different. Invention is the new thing. And the patent is the protection for that. You can have more patents based on one invention than one. One would be you're securing your patent in one jurisdiction. If you then go to, let's say, from Germany to the US, you need another one. Then you have 2 patents, but you have one invention. But the invention is actually the innovative step, and that's what we want to measure, and what of our most of our customers actually want to measure. So we took a sample from 3 to 9 inventions. That would be young companies with 3 to 9 inventions in the portfolio currently. That's our startup definition for this purpose here. We can argue about back and forth about this, but I think it gives you already a pretty accurate picture of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at your result, the average is 5. So I think for a 5-year-old company, on average, or 4-year-old company, managing to file for invention every 10 to 12 months, it's actually pretty good. For, let's say, some areas, it's even tremendously good. We can talk about that later. But the average here, you cannot do magic numbers here. It's not like you have a variance of a factor of 5 or so, that there are some companies who are like filing 20 inventions per year. That's simply just not possible with a small team. It just takes money and time to produce inventions that actually go through as a patent and hopefully a patent grant as well. And in terms of difference here, if you look at Switzerland and Austria and Germany, you see if you look at the numbers in terms of this market size or population size of the countries, you see that Switzerland on a relative basis is a little bit stronger than Germany, and Austria a little bit falls behind that, but it's all very much in line. And this is no big surprise, as I would say, startup and I would say business structure of those countries is pretty similar. You would definitely see bigger variations if you go to, let's say, Greece or other European countries that are more different in terms of the structure of the economy.
Mm-hmm. What I found interesting, we'll soon go through like the top filings in our sample we had per country. But what has been leading the charge, Switzerland, everybody has on top of their mind the banks, the chocolate, the watches and all of that. But it was actually biotech patents that is reigning supreme there.
Yeah. I mean, especially in Switzerland. And of course, you have large pharmaceutical companies in Switzerland. And the innovation, as in many industries, really is hard to keep up in large organizations. So it's no surprise that you see a lot of people maybe moving out of, let's say, Novartis and starting their own company with a little bit of experience and money, or you have people right from university going there and later sell this idea to one of the big ones. So outsourcing innovation has been taking place in the pharmaceutical, obviously, for quite some time. And it's no wonder they have some sort of ecosystem with a lot of funding, a lot of exit opportunities for founders and entrepreneurs in Switzerland, especially. But also, of course, in Germany, with a couple of bright spots, I would say, that in biotechnology that make up for some big innovation gaps that Germany might have in other areas. So,
what comes to mind is, of course, BioNTech here close to me in Mainz. Maybe that is something, the geographical distribution we can talk about next time when you come back, hopefully towards the end of the year, late fall, early winter. And I did also dig through your data, and we have rising stars in the application of patents, meaning that moved most spots in your 2022 ranking. Number one is analyzing material properties. Can you give us a very rough, short idea for business majors? What is behind that?
Yeah. So what we're looking here is the most filed areas. And again, this is one of the key advantages of patent information, that you can leverage a existing system of classifications with more than 200 or 300,000, depending what definition you take. Let's say 200,000 categories that are defined, maintained by absolute experts, very stable over time, and is very good to use for especially long-term trends and so on. So if you're looking at analyzing material properties, that sounds very broad, and it is. And that's probably also one reason why it's spot number one in the last 5 years. So if you want to, that's very much a pharmaceutical biotechnical area. I probably say 80% of that is coming from that business lines. But of course, if you do think about material properties, for example, in battery technology or in wind turbines that we need to, have a different. We need to have very interesting properties of those blades that we put up there in 150 meters, especially in wind and rain out there in the offshore space. There is, of course, an interest in material properties from chemical properties in almost every application out there. So there's no wonder that is on that level showing a very high count here. And of course, there's always a way to dig deeper, so you can go as granular as you can imagine, and then we would probably know where things are at. But of course, with electrolysis coming later on, talk about it, but battery technologies, there's always something with material properties to that.
Medical preparation, what would that be? That is number two, have been losing the top spot in 2022 to analyzing material properties. Medical preparation.
Yeah, medical preparation sounds very boring, but it's actually thinking about cancer treatment. It all starts, for example, with detecting the cancer. And most of the time it means you have to take some sort of tissue from your body and analyze that. And before you can analyze anything, you make sure you have that preparation ready. There's one startup, for example, from Munich that has grown tremendously in the last 3 years, just closing that gap in the value chain and making that more precise, more scalable, more error or less error prone, and preparing stuff before and analyzing stuff is super hot in terms, because diagnosis is a very hot topic at over the last 10 years. Just think about all the kinds of analyses that we need for fighting the pandemic, and without a clean preparation process for that, it's nearly impossible. And that's basically like data science as well. 80 to 85% of the work is done on the quality of the input, and the analysis is more the icing of the cake. So that's why medical preparation is at the core of everything that you do in biotech and pharmaceuticals, or not everything, but a lot.
In the light of the pandemic, that is not surprising. Number three is digital data processing with no change. Yes. That has been number three before. What came to mind here was big data and analytics. Is that about?
Digital data processing is a giant field if you look at the absolute size of it. And it's no surprise, I would say, that digital data processing as a technology that is important for so many other fields. It's very hard to imagine inventions in many fields without any link to digital data processing. So it's no surprise that it's there as well. Of course, the large funding numbers come from large companies here as well. like in Germany, SAP probably, and so on. But a lot of startups, of course, are in this field, and everybody who does something digital with a little bit more than data shifting around will be found in this digital data processing theme.
Mm-hmm. What I found interesting is optical elements and systems rising 10 spots to number 4. What I had in mind is something like lasers.
Yeah. Huh. So I think there are a lot of things that go in there. It is probably optical elements sounds more like something like in the laboratory. There are still some advancements there. That's true. But I think the vast growth in applying optical sensors into everyday items, from cars to, I don't know, mainly cars probably, of course, in terms of growth rates, but there are more cameras out there than ever, and there are more autonomous cars and devices and flying objects out there than ever, and all these need some sort of optical elements to that. And of course, a lot of this probably is linked to, or you would probably see if you do some interconnection with that, a lot of that is more software heavy than you might think, because a lot of advancements in, let's say, the quality of your phone equipment in terms of the camera comes from advanced software rather than advancement at the physical level of the lens or so. The lens, of course, is something that is very rarely improved these days. But what you do with a digital picture of that you take from this lens, and what software can do with it, that's something which saw tremendous growth in the last couple of years.
And number 5 is the shaping techniques, rising 2 spots to number 5. What I had here in mind, because we had an interview guest, is, for example, nanostructures. Would that be something going in there?
Could be. It also leads to additive manufacturing, because you need to do shaping a little bit at printing. The end. That might be true. But I mean, we have a strong manufacturing bone in Austria, Switzerland, and a backbone of the company, and in Germany as well. And so shaping is still important. So if you look at the precision tools that Germany and Switzerland and Austria is famous for, this has a lot to do with shaping stuff to a level that is higher, and then increasing efficiency for a drilling system by 10-15% or so by doing that. So this could be also some, I would say, old tech businesses or areas where shaping sounds old but still is very relevant.
Okay, and then I went through the top
stars.
50, the senders in the top 50. Yeah, exactly. Due to all the numbers here, the top 50 spots were split sometimes, and actually we have 53 numbers in there. That's why some have an asterisk. What is the most interesting here is, for me, for example, rising 56 places, conveyors and chutes. That is something I would either put in at a cashier, where you put all your groceries from the shopping on there, or the chute. Yes, of course, on a parent playground. I was not sure what to expect behind that.
And I have to tell you, I have no clue actually what's behind that, because you have to go so much into detail. And there's also, I mean, for many things that we look at, there's always a gap between the patent application, and the actual application of that. So just by reading the patent, and I don't know, have you ever touched a original patent document? It's a very hard read for non-IP professionals, I would say. And the reason for that is that the main objective of the one who's drafting these is to hide what it's actually about. So, and that's why it's very technical, of course, but it's also deliberately written. So it's very hard to find for anybody else what this is about and which product this goes into or is supposed to go into. And that's why a lot of our customers, especially look at venture capital, for example, they need context to our information to actually make even more sense. So you need to leverage that with other sources of information, qualitatively or quantitatively, to actually make sense of this if you go that deep, right? And we just cannot do that. So we have 1,000 IPC classifications on the very basic level that we track. So there's no way for me to keep up with all those inner workings.
Actually, we have both been interested in that. You sent me over an Excel sheet and I was thinking, that is some interesting data, but what does it mean? And that's exactly the point we're getting at here. And that's why we want to do this on a regular basis. Is there in the noteworthy ascenders in the top 50 anything where you can add, for example, something to the information we have there, to the classifications and where it comes from?
What is clearly, there are some connections here you can see. So image data processing and pictorial communication, that's something's pretty clear. I think that the advancement in the last couple of years in AI models that are able to create pictures and then let basically computers communicate through pictures, that is a field that is definitely growing. And it's rarely just one field that is growing, it's more associated fields that are growing with it. If you look at number 31, electrically conductive connections, and 15, measuring electric and magnetic variables, that's very much around electric motors, right? And there's definitely a rise in interest into that. It's not so much the motor itself, where we all know from school that they're already very, very efficient and it's very easy to put something very efficient. Even I think when I was young, put together in class. But of course, there was always new materials, new conductive connections, and measuring here electric variables is important for example, thinking about load times for batteries, when to load, how to load, efficiently load batteries. That's stuff that is, of course, a lot happening, especially in the startup phase, where, before things go into the mega factories of Tesla and so on, they are developed in small labs and smaller companies.
And getting the batteries charged of an electric vehicle in the same time it takes to fill up a tank of gas is something that is a major piece of being a completely electrical, no more combustion engine mobility out there. And that's why I do believe there will be some additional research here. We are running, unfortunately, out of time for our recording.
Sure.
I have 3 more graphics that I want to go through. One of them is the patent ranking for Germany. Of course, you can all see down here in the show notes on our blog post. The emission reduction in energy is the number 1 in Germany. And of course, the digital data processing, the materials we talked about, packages and containers is something I would put into logistics.
Yes, that's true.
Then we have Switzerland. Totally no surprise. As I said, biotech and related areas rule the field. Medical preparations, number 1. Therapeutical chemicals, number 2, and diagnosis and identification, number 3, and analyzing material properties, if it's related or not, is the next one. And digital data processing, of course, also used in the medical field. I found this very, very interesting because if we put it together, it makes up almost 50% of the patent filing there.
That's definitely, and so you see in Switzerland the most of the focus in terms of theme, definitely. Yep.
And Austria would completely and utterly surprise me here is the top classification, windows, doors, and wings. And I have totally no idea what that means.